Sorry for the throwaway account, but I only have Reddit for parenting subs to help with raising my 3 siblings, and I don't want this linked back to me since I'm a private person. I'm a 28-year-old man currently taking care of my 3 younger siblings, a 12-year-old boy, a 12-year-old girl, and a 16-year-old girl. I've been their primary caregiver since my younger sister was born. Our parents are completely out of the picture. I don't know if they're in the same state, still in the country, or even alive at this point, and frankly, I don't care. The day my first sibling was born, everything fell on my shoulders. When my other siblings came into the world, I automatically became their caretaker too. Long story short, I became both mom and dad to them. I've taken care of them their entire lives. They know I'm their brother, but every so often, they slip up and call me a dad, and honestly, it doesn't bother me. Growing up, our home life was toxic. When I turned 18, I moved out into a small 2-bedroom apartment and took my siblings with me. I worked myself to the bone, balancing taking care of them, working, and going to school. It took longer than I'd like to admit, but I eventually finished school and landed a good job. After years of hard work, I saved up enough to buy a house for us 4 years ago. Once we were settled, I took the legal steps to get custody of my siblings. I got into a bit of trouble with social services for not reporting anything sooner, but all the legal matters have been resolved, and they're officially in my custody. Now, on to why I'm posting here. A few months ago, maybe 4 or 5, I broke up with my girlfriend of 1 year. The incident that triggered it still makes me feel sick to my stomach. My youngest sister got her first period, and as any responsible caregiver would, I helped her through it. I explained everything to her in detail and reassured her that it was perfectly normal. My now ex-girlfriend lost it. She called me a pig, a creep, a pedo, and a bunch of other nasty things. My sister ran out of the living room, locked herself in her room, and refused to talk to me. It took me almost the entire day to get her to open up, and even then, it was only after my older sister came home from a sleepover to mediate. My 16-year-old sister helped explain to our younger sister that I did nothing wrong, and even pointed out that I'd help her through her first period too. She told her that she's lucky to have both of us to help her through these things. My ex tried to come back and apologize, but I told her we were done and kicked her out. After the breakup, things got even weirder. She started stalking us. Every store I went into, she'd somehow be there. If we went to the park, she'd show up too. I blocked her on everything and made sure she was blocked on my siblings' phones as well. But then we started getting phone calls and messages from different numbers. It was clearly her, trying to excuse her behavior with some sob story. This went on for about a month until she crossed a line I never thought she'd cross. One morning, after I dropped my siblings off at school, she showed up and tried to sign them out with a fake permission letter. Thankfully, the receptionist called me, and I was able to stop her. That was the last straw. I filed for a restraining order, gathering all the evidence I could, photos, messages, call logs. We got the restraining order, and the frequency of her appearances dropped considerably. But she didn't stop completely. She violated the restraining order a few times, but when I went to the police, they said there wasn't much they could do unless it could be proven she was doing it deliberately. When we ran into her, she'd just continue on her way or leave, so there wasn't much they could charge her with. Things took a turn for the worse when the house next to mine went up for rent. You can probably guess who showed up to view it. I saw her there with a real estate agent and felt my stomach drop. She approached me with a smile saying, "Hey, I guess we'll be neighbors now." I didn't even respond. I went back into my house, showed the agent the restraining order, and called the police. This time, they took me seriously. My ex was arrested, and she lost the opportunity to rent the house. The real estate company refused to do business with her, and the agent gave a statement to the police confirming that she had specifically asked to rent the house next to mine. She was fined but not imprisoned. Now, I'm receiving a flood of calls and messages, accusing me of ruining her life. She's being evicted from her current apartment, which is owned by the same rental company, and she might lose her job because she can't find a place to stay within her budget. She's possibly going to have to move back in with her parents in another state. Even her sister and friends are refusing to help her, and while I don't know the specifics, I'm guessing it's because of the situation she put herself in. Some of my own friends are calling me an asshole, saying I took things too far and that I'm being vindictive since she's not a real threat to me. What they don't understand is that my siblings' safety is my #1 priority. To address some other points, I appreciate everyone pointing out an old post made by my ex about this situation. Yes, it's about me and my siblings. I wasn't aware she had posted it, and I'm not thrilled about it, but there's nothing I can do about that now. When we first started dating, she was a lovely woman who got along well with my siblings. But after the incident with my sister's first period, she completely flipped, and I don't know if it was an act or if something triggered her. As for my friends who are siding with her, I've realized that most of them are women. I didn't want to make this a gender issue, but I'm going to sit down and explain everything to them in detail one more time. If they still don't agree with my actions, I'm cutting them off. The only reason I'm even giving them this chance is because they've been incredibly supportive when it comes to raising my siblings, especially my sisters. In the end, I'll always prioritize the safety and well-being of my siblings over everything else, even if it means losing a few friends along the way.
Story number 2.
I, 27F, have been with my husband, 31M, for 5 years, married for 3. We have 2 young children together, 2M and 4MOF. Before we got married, we signed a prenup, which we both agreed on to protect our assets and ensure our relationship was built on love and not finances, as he makes way more money than I do, think 90K/year versus 500K/year, but I have more premarital assets. I'm donor conceived, and I found out a few years ago that I'm a carrier of a genetic disorder due to fertility fraud. The clinic that helped conceive me used a different donor than what my parents had selected, and that donor passed the building blocks of an X-linked genetic disorder. Because of this, when my husband and I decided to start a family, we chose to use IVF to ensure our children wouldn't inherit the disorder, which can be deadly. We also opted to have paternity tests done, not because of any doubts about fidelity, but to make sure there was no mix-up with the embryos, given my own history and our mistrust in the fertility industry. My brother-in-law, husband's brother, 35M, has very traditional views and is a bit of a conspiracy theorist. Recently, he's been using our decision to do paternity tests as an example of why all men should demand them, claiming that if women have nothing to hide, they shouldn't object. He often says, even embryo through, it was okay with it, so why shouldn't other women be? He constantly says stuff like this in front of his fiancée. This really bothers me for several reasons. First, our decision had nothing to do with trust or fidelity. It was about avoiding the kind of fertility fraud that happened to me. Second, I feel like he's twisting our experience to fit his narrative, which is misleading and unfair. Third, it's in front of his fiancée and must make her feel awful and that he expects her to cheat. Lastly, I don't appreciate being used as a pawn in his arguments, especially when it comes to something as personal as our family planning decisions. I've asked him multiple times to stop bringing us up in his conversations, but he just brushes me off and says I'm being too sensitive. My husband supports me, but he thinks I should just ignore his brother, as confronting him might only make things worse. A few days ago, my brother-in-law brought it up again at a family dinner and made sure to tell his fiancée that she should expect a paternity test to be completed before he even interacts with their future children, and I snapped. I told him in front of everyone that he needs to stop using me as an example in his arguments, and that our situation is completely different from what he's talking about. I also said that his insistence on pushing this narrative is disrespectful and hurtful not only to us, but to his fiancée. He got really upset and accused me of embarrassing him in front of the family. Now, some of my in-laws think I was too harsh and that I should have just ignored him like my husband suggested and avoid rocking the boat. Am I the asshole?